Hi everyone, I'm Angie with the Gamer Crafting Podcast. I just recorded, or thought I recorded half of a podcast, but I wasn't actually recording, so here we go. Take two. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Gamer Crafting Podcast. I just recorded about 30 minutes of a podcast and then realized when I looked down and didn't see a timestamp, it wasn't actually recording at all. Well done me. That's what I get for drinking herbal tea instead of coffee in the morning. Woof. Okay, so take two. Let's try that all again. Today I'm going to be talking about yarn shows and why they might not be for everyone. Okay, take two. Let me just gather my gather my thoughts again. Well done, me. Alright, so I feel like I still haven't recovered from daylight savings. Did anybody else feel like that? It's only 1 hour, and yet I feel like it just I have no idea what's going on. I feel like I have the worst jet lag, even though I've not been anywhere that's had major jet lag in like a good amount of years. Ugh. Okay, so if you are interested in hearing about the sort of drama upheaval from last week, you can watch last Saturday's live stream. It's still available on the channel. It's called Dinos and Drama. This week we're moving away from that because I'm tired of talking about it, and and also I don't know, I just don't really love giving loads of oxygen to people who are just trying to cause problems. So this week we are talking about yarn shows and why they might not be for everyone. When I say that, I mean they may not be for every indie dyer. There's a lot of work that goes into preparing for a yarn show, and as I am currently in the thick of that, preparing for Woolen in June in Dublin, I'm gonna kind of tell you the things that go into preparing for a yarn show. Okay, so number one is researching a show. If it's a brand new show, you can't always do a lot of research because they're brand new. So you can't ask them for footfall or what their audience looked like, demographics, you know, what teachers they had, because they're brand new. They won't have any of that information. However, if it's an established show, you can ask that if they show up in your inbox asking you to apply. If it's a well-known show, you can ask in some Facebook groups, you can ask around, see if people enjoyed themselves. Sometimes I'll go to shows just to see if I like vending there. Sometimes I go to a show just to go to a show. It's not always because I'm scoping it out to see if we'd like to do it. Sometimes I just want to go and harass people. Not harass people. Sometimes I just want to go and like bother people that I'm friends with, and because when I don't have my own stall, I have more freedom to kind of wander around, take some interesting videos for the podcast, like I did Unravel back in February. So other things to ask, or that you kind of have to think about, is are there going to be enough people to merit doing this show? Are they going to be the right people doing the show? Is it the right audience? Sometimes that answer is no. And sometimes you don't know that that answer is no until after you do a show and put in all of the work, which is super disheartening. And it's also one of the reasons that we've kind of pulled back on the number of shows that we've done this year, that we have planned this year. We did a lot of shows last year and it was super exhausting, and the amount of work wasn't like equal with the amount of rewards, you know? Sometimes an audience isn't going to be for you. General craft shows doesn't work for us. Because if you consider, well, if you have a craft show, not everybody who goes to a general craft show is going to be a knitter or a crocheter. So already you're taking a big chunk of attendees out of people who potentially buy from you. And then you consider, well, not every knitter or crocheter is going to be somebody who's interested in hand-dyed yarn. Maybe they prefer big box yarn, whatever, you don't know their life. So then that's another chunk of the attendees that aren't going to be buying from you. So then it's kind of like a chunk of a chunk of a chunk, and then you end up there all day for like 5 people to be super pleased that you're there. So general craft shows generally aren't it. There are some shows that have straight up told us that we're not right for them. Obviously it's none of the shows that we've actually done, and I'm not gonna, you know, try and stir up too much drama there, but and it's true though, but it is true, there are some shows that we're not right for. You know, we have a lot of neon yarn, we're a bit weird, well, I'm a bit weird, Sarah's which is probably a bit more normal than me. I wander around shows with giant steampunk glasses and a green boiler suit with, like, you know, handmade embroidered patches all over it, so... so yeah, you know, straight up I've had some shows be like, it's not right. And they're probably right. It wasn't right. We weren't right for them. Their audience wasn't right for us. So really, for all involved, it's good that they were honest. But that kind of takes me into my next point of when researching a show or deciding to do a show, like, does it feel inclusive? Not just for LGBT people, does it feel inclusive for people of color? Because a lot of times, historically, it hasn't been friendly. It's been a bit samey with regards to audience and vendors and teachers and the keynote speaker and the organizers. And it's kind of stuff like that, that if you are not somebody who's part of a marginalized community, then you're not going to know what it feels like to walk into a room and feel like everyone's looking at you, that everyone's watching you. You feel very uncomfortable. I did a show once where a woman walked past our stand, our stall. She said, she was like, I'm not buying from this stand, they're lesbians. And I was like, okay. Great. She obviously said it loud enough so that we would hear her. She wasn't trying to hide anything. But that's what I mean when I say, like, is an event inclusive? Have the organizers made a statement of inclusivity? Have they actually taken steps towards inclusivity without having to be pressured to do so? Which is another long podcast in and of itself. But also with regards to inclusivity is accessibility. Is an event accessible for people who have different needs with regards to people who use mobility aids, whether they use crutches or a walker or a scooter? Are they going to feel safe at this yarn show? Are they going to feel like they can move around without feeling like they're going to get knocked over? Or feeling like people are going to be snarky, that they're taking up too much room or taking up too much time? I don't want to be at an event where people are made to feel like that. So we just don't do events like that. I will say that the events that we have on for this year, so the ones that we have confirmed are Woolen, which I've already mentioned, in June, or maybe I didn't mention it. Maybe I mentioned that in the in the erased podcast that wasn't even erased. I just wasn't recording. Well done me. And Perth in September are both really great for accessibility. The organizers of both of those shows put a lot of thought towards making sure that they're accessible for people who use all kinds of mobility aids. And I think that that's really great. I've had people at both of those events come up and say, you know, I've been at other events and I've not felt safe, but I feel safe here. And that's really important. So for us, you know, researching a show is, you know, trying to make sure that everyone who wants to come see us can come see us in a way that they're not going to feel unsafe, or they're not going to feel targeted or even uncomfortable, because nobody wants to feel uncomfortable at a yarn show. You're supposed to be there to have fun. You don't want to be, you know, worried that people are going to make snarky comments to you. Number 2. Let's talk about the upfront costs of doing a yarn show, because they are large. I did see wandering around on Facebook where somebody said to another indie dyer, I think it was Up North Yarns, she said, oh, I'd love to know how you get all that free yarn. And the indie dyer was like, it's not free. I don't know why somebody would think that. We do get yarn for free, but spoiler, we definitely don't. There's no free yarn, just like there's no free lunch, so they say. So kind of, let me just back that up a minute here. So with regards to upfront costs, the first thing is the show itself. So it's whatever fees that we're paying in order to be allowed to have a stand at a show. Those costs can kind of wildly vary depending on where the show is, what the venue is, how big your stand is, whether it's a single or a double or a triple or a giant quadruple. I will say we've typically taken singles in the past, though I think we've got doubles at the next couple shows we've got. So the show itself costs money. And then in order to do shows, you have to have liability insurance. So that's another cost that well, I mean, you're going to pay it once a year, but when you first start doing shows, it's something you have to consider, you know, so I have to remember to renew it every year. I have a business insurance company where around this time every year they send me letters saying that my business insurance is about to expire, and then they call me loads, and I have no idea who they are. My business insurance was with a completely different company. It's very bizarre. I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are, and I've told them I've never bought business insurance with you, and she's like, oh no, we have it here, and I was like, I haven't though. Strange. Is somebody buying my business insurance for me? Because if you could just let me know, I'll stop renewing with the other with the other company that I actually do use. So the other thing that most vendors will do is pay for accommodation up front. So that means you're booking your accommodation in advance. And that happens because obviously the closer you get to a show, the more that people who are visiting the show are going to be trying to get accommodation. I made a rookie error back in 2017 when we did Yarndale, which is a fab event. When we did Yarndale, which is in Skipton, and I waited until like 6 weeks before the event to try and book accommodation. I was fool. So foolish. Because then the kinds of places that I was looking to book, they were all booked up, and the only stuff that was available was either a little bit far away from me being a vendor, or a bit more expensive than I wanted to pay being a vendor. It's one thing if you're going to a show as a visitor and you're making a weekend of it and it's really fun and it's like a little getaway. Cool, great. When you're there as a vendor, you're kind of trying to keep costs down a bit. So we ended up camping in Skipton at the end of September in 2017. It was fine. We actually had a blast camping. It was a gorgeous campsite. Can't remember the name of it. If you're curious, drop me a comment and I'll look it up for you. But, oh no, I do remember. It was called the Wood Nook Caravan Site, and it was lovely, and it had amazing Wi-Fi. We were staying in a tent, like in the normal tent camping area, and we had a full Wi-Fi signal, and it was free Wi-Fi. Bananas. So if you're looking to go camping around Yarndale, check them out. It was a really good camping site. So anyway, but that's another upfront cost, is that you're having to book either a hotel or a campsite in our case, or an Airbnb. You're having to book that well ahead of time, so that you're not left, you know, sleeping in your car in the parking lot of the event. And then it's travel. In cases where you can drive, obviously your travel costs are just going to be, you know, making sure that your car is functional, and then gas. But if you are a vendor who has quite a large stand, or if you have stuff that you can't just like squish into a bag like you can with yarn, then lots of people lots of people hire vans for shows over the weekends. And that's not something that we have done personally, because we haven't needed it up till now, to be honest. But there are a lot of vendors who do have to hire vans, so that's another upfront cost. And a lot of times there's like extra insurance involved with that, and people whose vehicles may potentially get damaged by accident and whatever. So yeah, so traveling up to a show is an upfront cost, whether you're driving or hiring a van. Displays always cost money. That's not necessarily something you're gonna have to buy for every show, of course, but you definitely have to think about it every show, because every show is going to have a slightly different way that they do things, whether it's that the dimensions of the stands are slightly different, whether it's, you know, some shows have a shell scheme, so like those backing boards that you can hang stuff up on, some shows don't have that. So if you're used to doing shows with the backing boards and then you're doing a show that doesn't have one, then you kind of have to think, you know, how am I going to display stuff? How am I going to have everything set up? Sometimes the dimensions of the stands are different. Sometimes just getting stuff in and out of a show can be different and change the way that you want to have your display. So it's always something you have to think about with regards to planning. Sometimes you do have to buy extra stuff. I'm kind of in the midst of not being totally sure how we want to set things up for Woolen in June. When we did Woolen last year, we took our little 2001 Nissan Micra. We got on the ferry with it loaded all the way up to the ceiling with yarn, and the grids sat on top of the yarn, and they sort of like sat over our heads a bit, and it was fine, but I didn't super love dealing with the grids when we went camping after the show, because then there was less yarn to hold the grids up, so I was having to kind of like MacGyver ways to keep the grids from shifting around. A lot of zip ties were used. So at this point, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to deal with the grids being in the car the whole time after the show. Like, for the show is fine. I don't know if I want them there after the show, so I'm thinking, should we change it up? Should we do a different display that packs down flat? Would that be better? We don't know. We haven't decided yet. Probably won't decide until it's too late. Sorry, I'm just talking about who knows what. I'm sure most of you don't care about how to pack things in the car. Another upfront cost, card readers. So again, that's a thing that you're not going to pay for every time, but you have to pay for it initially. And then you have to have a phone that can work with the smart reader. And then you also have to think about the fees the smart reader charges, because it's not free. There's like a percentage per each sale used on card, which is why a lot of vendors prefer cash. I don't mind. So don't feel like this is me sort of subversively telling you that you shouldn't be asking to use a card at our stand. Like, we have it. It's there. I don't care. It's fine. It's all good. However you choose to pay for your yarn is super great. And a cash float, it's not necessarily an expense because you'll put it back at the end, but if you're somebody whose bank account like isn't, you know, super high up there in the numbers, then even taking out, you know, 150 or 200 pounds for a cash float can feel a little painful. And then there's the big one. There's the yarn. The huge amounts of yarn that you have to buy in for a show. Kilos and kilos and kilos and kilos of yarn. Lots of yarn. So much yarn. And that's on top of whatever yarn you usually buy in for, you know, clubs or re-dyeing stuff that's out of stock, or you know, whatever else you're doing. Collaborations, etc. So if you're considering that for a single stand, you're probably gonna buy in about, what, 30 kilos of yarn on top of whatever you would usually have if you're dyeing yarn specifically for a show. So that's, you know, that's well over $1,000 worth of undyed yarn, $1.50. It depends on what bases you're buying. It depends who you're buying them from. So that these are not catch-all terms. If people are selling lots of cashmere and silk, they're going to listen to that figure I just made. They're going to laugh. They're going to throw their heads back and laugh at me. Like I said, it depends what bases you're buying. But the point I'm making is that it is not an insignificant cost. It's a lot of money. In fact, I definitely just like lowballed that a lot. My point is it's very expensive, and you have to have that kind of money that you can then invest into doing a show. And you know, that's why a lot of indie dyers, they opt not to do shows, because they're like, I don't have that kind of extra cash flow hanging around for me to invest in doing a show that I have to pay to be at without knowing how it's going to turn out. It can feel a little bit like a gamble, I will be honest, which is why some vendors will get a bit nervous and a bit worried if the show isn't quite as busy as they'd hoped. It's not just because we're greedy, it's because we've put lots of money into being there, and for some, especially small indie dye businesses, or not, I'm focusing on indie dyes here, but there's a lot of other small businesses that show up at yarn shows. So if you're a small business who's just starting out, having a bad show or 2 bad shows can seriously impact whether you're able to expand and continue having a business or not. I'm actually expecting 2 huge deliveries of yarn today. In fact, the buzzer might go any minute with the Parcel Force delivery guy, and also the DPD delivery guy. One is much nicer than the other. One is generally a friendly guy, and the other one seems a little crabby, and he's gonna carry a whole giant box of yarn up 3 flights of stairs, and I can't really blame him. I did say last time, I was like, you can just leave it at the bottom, and I'll come pick it up. He's like, nope, I'm contractually obligated to bring it upstairs. I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna tell on you. I do feel bad that you've got, you know, time delays and limits, and that I don't have an elevator and this is a box that weighs a lot and is huge. So yeah, so buying in the yarn or the raw costs or whatever it is that your small business is, like those costs are not insignificant. They are very significant. In fact, it's not something to kind of just gloss over. It's definitely commitment. So if you're deciding to do a show, you know, you're deciding to do a show. Like I said, the shows that we've got definitely penciled in for this year are Woolin in June and Perth in September. And as far as I know right now, that's all we've got. But you never know, things might change. We might be announcing another show at some point. We'll have to see. Number 3 on the list is the upfront work. So along with the upfront cost of buying all of the raw materials in is the work of actually doing the thing, making the things. You know, whether you're making yarn bowls from pottery, whether you're hand dyeing yarn, or whether you're, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of different ways that this could go. So for me personally, that means a lot of extra dyeing. As you know, we work out of a 1-bedroom apartment. We don't have loads of space to set up extra burners, you know, or extra microwaves or extra whatever. We don't have the room for that. So having shows, right, where we're dyeing extra for shows on top of what we usually do, so the Mystery Yarn Club, which is every month. April's theme is Long Journey, and it's the Mini Skein Club, and it's the I'm forgetting one. Oh, the Nihilist Rainbow Blanket Club. So it's plus, you know, re-dyes for the shop and a custom order here or there. Those aren't super common. So it's dyeing all of the stuff on top of what we would normally be dyeing in that month. So it goes from being like, yeah, we dye a bit of yarn every day, to being like, we dye loads of yarn every day, and there's no room anywhere, and there's yarn all over every surface, and I'm a little bit stressed, and the walls are closing in. I had a dream a few weeks ago that I was being suffocated by a giant pile of needle-felted birds, and I'm going to pretend like that has nothing to do with the fact that there's no room in the flat because of yarn. So yeah, so space is at a premium here. We're just going to get rid of the bed and just put yarn storage there instead, and then we can just sleep on the floor. So it's the extra work of doing whatever it is. Like I said, for us, that means extra dyeing. Because there are some yarns that sell enough at a show that I can't just take them out of inventory. I've got to dye up a batch for the show. And that's the case for a lot of things, like the Rainicorn yarns, all 3 of them, like the Lightsaber yarns, all 5 of them now. There used to be only 4, now there are 5. And it's labeling that stuff as well. So printing out 8 million yarn bands and labeling it and printing out all of the sticky labels and labeling them and putting them in bags and then being like, where am I going to put this for the next month and a half? When you don't have any room. It's also juggling inventory. I feel like inventory is the bane of mine. I'm going to start having nightmares about inventory because we still have an Etsy shop, because the discoverability there is decent enough that I feel like we should keep it. And there's some people who prefer to shop on Etsy because they don't trust outside websites, which is understandable. Even though ours is super safe, if you're wondering. It's got a secure certificate and everything. It took me like ages to set it up. Just trust me, it's super. We ended up changing providers because the other one wasn't secure enough. So, you know, tells you all you need to know. But it's managing things across different platforms, and then you add a show into the mix, and then you're talking about, well, now I'm managing inventory across the shop, the Etsy, and setting stuff aside for a show. So juggling inventory the closer you get to a show can be a bit, like a little bit harrowing. It genuinely can. And then you end up, you know, I don't know. There's some people who close their shops entirely to go and do shows. And we've done that in the past. We've been like, yep, nothing. We'll be back later. Goodbye. Managing inventory is definitely something that takes a lot of time and effort, and sometimes gives me a little bit of a headache. Preparing for a show, there's also, if you want to do any collaborations with anyone else there, takes a lot of time and organizational efforts. If you're working with a designer who's doing a pattern, then it's getting them the yarn in enough time for them to design it and have it knitted and photographed and send it back to you in enough time so that you can then take it to a show, and then, you know, dyeing up packs maybe for it or whatever. And the thing is that with the amount of upfront work, it's not for every small business, because not every small business has a support system, if that makes sense. Obviously, Sarah and I, we run the business together. Even though I tend to be the face of the yarn stuff more often than she is, she's the one who's packing orders and shipping orders, and when it comes to getting closer to doing a show, she picks up a lot of the slack with twisting and labeling and packing things into the car and helping me make lists of everything that needs to get taken care of. So, you know, it's not just me running it. For some people who don't have another person that they can kind of lean on a little bit to help them out, doing a show is almost impossible, or I'm sure it feels almost impossible. I can't imagine doing a show on my own with zero help. I would freak out. I tend to freak out a bit before shows anyway. You know, how people have those dreams like, oh, I'm on stage and I don't remember my lines. I get that, but for yarn shows. So you get to, so my dreams are like, you get to a yarn show, oh no, I've forgotten all of my stock at home, I don't have anything to sell. Or you get there and you've gone to the wrong venue or whatever. So it's that same kind of like nervousness, same kind of nervousness, but applied to yarn shows instead of being on stage. Because I was a performance major in university, I had a lot of those nightmares when I was in university, so it's like a weird conglomeration of those two things. So not everybody has that kind of support system. You know, having somebody else to help you out, whether it's your other half, whether it's a family member or a friend, or somebody that you pay with real cash money to be there. And the other thing is that if you're somebody, so talking about, you know, support systems and stuff, if you're somebody who is the support system for other people, then it's going to be harder to do a show. You know, like a single mom who's basically the support system in their family unit anyway, it's probably going to be difficult unless they've got somebody else that they can count on to help them out. Like I said, you know, a friend or a family member, or even just somebody who they've hired in to help. And the other thing is any kind of disability, be it temporary injury, or something that's more of a chronic or permanent issue. So we don't typically hire in a lot of help. In fact, the only time that we ever have done, I mentioned this during last Saturday's live stream, the only time we ever have done is for advent calendars this past year, because I developed whatever this is. I don't know whether it's repetitive strain or carpal tunnel. The point is that it's not typically bad enough to merit any major issues, but it does require me to sleep and exist in a brace when it gets worse, which is why I'm wearing one now. But we hired a teenage daughter of a friend who was raising money for her own charity initiatives. We hired her to do all of the twisting of the mini skeins for the advent calendar. When were we packing those up? Early November, late October. And so that's the only time we've ever hired in any outside help. Otherwise, it's just us. But if you have any kind of issues, whether they be mobility issues or like this prevents having this weird wrist thing, whatever it is, makes it really difficult for me to twist up yarns from their from their recently dyed existence. It makes it difficult. Like I can't do it with a brace on, and with a brace off it hurts. So that's something that then Sarah has to then pick up and do because I can't. But if you don't, like I said, if you don't have somebody else who can help you pick up the slack and help you do things that you aren't able to do, it gets difficult. You know, when it comes to, I don't know, I've gone on about this support system thing long enough, but my point is that doing shows on your own is mega difficult, and anyone who does shows on their own without any outside help, you're awesome. I couldn't do it. Number 4 is actually doing the show. So it depends. Some shows are 2 days, some shows are 3 days, some shows are 1 day. So the very first show that we ever did was Perth Festival of Yarn in 2017. It doesn't seem that long ago. Feels like we've done a lot of shows since then, and learned quite a lot since then, but that was our very first show. So we drove all the way from down here in the southeast of England. We drove all the way up to Perth in Scotland to do a 1-day show, which is not something that I would do now, but at that time we were still pretty new and trying to prove ourselves amidst a field of worthy contenders. So we did Perth Festival of Yarn in 2017, and it was a 1-day show then. It's 2 days now. And when you're doing a show, so there's the setting up, which I take forever at, and it's always way longer to set up than take down, like way mega longer. It's the same for anything, right? Like when I did theater stuff, it took forever to get the scenes and the sets set up properly so that everything looked great. But strike down, it was just like, nope, down, get it out. Like people are just like, you know, ripping plywood apart with their bare hands, basically. So doing a show, you arrive and you set up all of your stuff. So for most people, this means some sort of display, whether it's grid wall or shelving or whatever. And then it's arranging everything. Like I said, every show is a little different. Even if it's just the lighting that's different, that can change how you decide to set everything up. I'll be honest and say that I tend to kind of miss the mark with merchandising sometimes. I think highlighting things that I think are cool but that other people maybe don't, so I tend to sort of listen to Sarah more there because she's got more of an eye for it than me. But so there's setting up, right? So you roll up at the venue and you unload your 30 plus kilos of yarn. That's going to be more if you have obviously a double stand, or if you're mega popular, or if it's a longer show or a busier show or whatever. Ballpark figures, probably not even ballpark, I'm just making them up. So you roll up with your tons of yarn and you go to set everything up, and you're sitting on the floor. Saying this, I know that I've taken way more than 30 kilos to shows. It's probably like double that. Anyway, you know, you're sitting on the floor and you're loading yarn onto pegs, or you're putting yarn bowls on shelving or whatever, and you're, you know, there are some people that are whip fast getting their stuff set up. Like they're in and out 90 minutes tops. I am in awe of those people. I am amazed by their, like, very, you know, they've got everything figured out. They know exactly where they want everything to go. And I get in there and I mess around with stuff. Oh, well, maybe this should go over here. Maybe this should actually go over here. Meanwhile, Sarah's like, I'm hungry. Can we like wrap? It's fine. It looks fine. Can we just like wrap it up and go eat? And I'm getting like hangrier and hangrier by the second. Start snapping at her, and I'm like, why don't you just, and she's like, all right, let's go. I'm calling time. We're going for dinner before you start attacking pedestrians. So you get in and you have to set everything up. And then you'll go back to your accommodation for the evening, whether it's a hotel or camping, which is what we usually do. And then you have dreams about how you've forgotten all of your stock at home and how you've gone to the wrong venue, and then you get up in the morning and you're like, right, it's, you know, it's getting on time for the show to open. So you get, you know, you strap on your steampunk goggles and you shimmy your way into your coveralls, and you do the final touches of your stand. Make sure, you know, you've got your card readers charged, you've got your spare battery, and your phone is charged to take card payments, and you know, you've got your cash float and you've got everything ready. And then it's a pretty long day, and I'm lucky that I have somebody who runs the stand with me. If I have to take off for 20 minutes because I need to scarf a sandwich because I'm starving, then I can be like, hey, you know, Sarah, can you just watch the stand for like 10-15 minutes? You know, I'll be back. She always is a little bit a little bit worried. So if you see Sarah at a stand by herself, maybe don't ask her any super technical yarn questions, or she might panic a little. But you know, I'm totally fine to just be like, can you watch things? I need to go, I need to walk around, I need to just have like a moment of peace. And she's totally fine. She's fine to do that. But there's lots of people who don't have that, whether, you know, maybe they're doing a show by themselves and so they can't leave their stand. And it's in this case when it's like, thank the organizers for getting volunteers. Whether the volunteers are bringing you food that you've pre-ordered, whether the volunteers are offering to watch your stand for 5 minutes so you can run and pee, volunteers definitely make shows go round. And if I'm at a show where there's tons of volunteers like roaming around being like, hey, do you need anything? Can I help you? Even though I'm typically fine because I've got Sarah with me, you know, like I still feel really like, oh, well, even if something happens, like, you know, they're not just gonna be like throwing me to the wolves, basically. So volunteers are definitely, they're definitely a mark of a really good show. Especially if they're wandering around being like, did you need food? Can I get you a coffee? Would you like a tea? You're just like, oh, yes, you know. So doing the show, it's a long day. If you figure most shows are what, like 10 to 6 or 10 to 5? I mean, that's basically a solid 8 hours without an actual lunch break. Unless you have somebody that you can be like I said, you can say watch the stand. But even then, that's not like a lunch break per se, because I'm still visible unless I go and hide in the car. And it's also, when you're doing the show, you have to decide whether you're going to close your other shop brackets or not. So for us, it's deciding whether we're going to close the gamercrafting.com website, which we haven't the last few times, but I'm not totally sure how things are going to go in June and September. And it's also deciding whether we're going to close the Etsy shop, which we usually do because people who find us on Etsy don't already know us and won't have seen the announcement saying that we're away. And I don't want people to be disappointed if something's shipping a bit later. Because sometimes people don't see or don't read whatever the shop announcement is. So we tend to close the Etsy while we're gone, but not the website. But like I said, I don't know what's going to happen in June and September. A lot depends on very large, teetering life decisions, so I don't know, we'll see. But it's deciding whether you're going to close your shop, because if you do close your shop, well then, if you're at a show and the show isn't doing well, you've closed your shop, so you can't even be, you know, making money from that weekend, if that makes sense. So that's another thing to consider when you see vendors at events. And for a lot of people who, you know, their small business isn't their full-time thing, it's like 3/4 time for us, I think. I do a bit of freelance work here and there on the side, but most of my time is definitely spent on gamer crafting. But for people who have a regular 9 to 5, it's taking the time off of work to either prep for the show or do the show. While most shows are on the weekend, you know, there's a lot of people whose jobs aren't just 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. You know, if they've got variable shift schedules, then they're gonna have to take the time off regardless, request that time off, which again could potentially mean that you're not getting paid for those days. So that's kind of more money that you're throwing into the wind and hoping it comes back to you at a show. And then for people who have kids, it's sorting out childcare when they're doing a show. Obviously, we don't have kids, so that's not something that we personally have to consider, but I just wanted to mention it because a lot of vendors, they do have kids, kid or kids, and so that's something that they have to consider when they're coming to do a show, like who's watching their children. Because I feel like a yarn show might not be the most interesting place for small children. And I say that as somebody who really enjoys yarn shows. But I remember going to craft shows and stuff with my mom when she was running. She would go to craft shows to sell handcrafted stuff when I was a kid. And I very distinctly remember at least one show taking a nap under the table because I was bored. I don't remember how old I was. I just know for sure I took a nap under the table because I was a bit bored. And I was a kid who was really interested by arts and crafts, so, you know, not every kid's going to be as interested. Speaking of kids, though, I will say I super love seeing kids that come with their parents to yarn shows, and it's obvious that they're not begrudgingly there. Like, these are kids that are, like, actually super amped to be there, and they're really excited, and they're helping their parents pick out or parents, guardians, you know, they might be there with grandma or grandpa, whatever. So, you know, helping their guardians pick out yarn for them, or, you know, to make something for them, or whether they're picking out stuff because they want to learn to knit or crochet, or they already know how. There was a kid, I think it was at Perth. It was at Perth last September, so Perth 2018, and there was a girl who came to our stand, and she was tiny. She was, I don't know how old she was, but I'm just saying she was like, you know, small, blonde-headed child. And and I remember she looked around and she was reading. She was very, very specific that she wanted a yarn that was gonna like, that the name that she really liked. And she picked up one of the lightsaber yarns. It was the Mace Windu one. And she picked it up and she turned it around and she read the label, which is Windu Saber. And she looked at her mom. She went, "Oh, like, Mommy, I want this one," and like held it like this, like just kind of like, "Oh, I want this one. Like, I'm gonna spend my birthday money on this yarn." And I was like, I'm gonna cry, like tiny child geeks. So that was cute, and that's the kind of thing that does make the shows worth it, is seeing people who really connect with whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're dyeing yarn or making yarn bowls or, you know, any of the other. Those are the two. I don't know why I've like so rigidly stuck to those two examples, probably just because I'm tired. Obviously that's not the only thing that you're gonna find at a yarn show. What other things do you find? Spinning. Yeah, spinning fibers, spinning wheels, or like weaving looms. There's loads of stuff that you'll find at a yarn show. And what else do I have? Yeah, so I think I was just kind of saying that it's just a long day. And the caveat there for people who might not want to do shows are people who potentially have social anxiety. Even if it's not crippling social anxiety, a show can feel very intense. I know I have my nightmares beforehand, but actually at a show, I'm generally like, I'm pretty all right. There's only been one time at a show that I felt really claustrophobic, and that wasn't one that I was vending at. That was a show that I just happened to be visiting, and this was like years and years ago now. And so yeah, I mean, at a show, like, I'm generally pretty fine. Sarah gets a bit more nervous. But I mean, for some people who have crippling social anxiety, they're probably not going to want to do a show. Not ever. So if you have a favorite indie dyer or a favorite or a favorite small business and you're like, "Oh, do this show," and they're like, "Don't want to do shows," don't harass them. Let them not do shows. It's fine. Buy from them online. And shows are not for everybody. If you're somebody with crippling social anxiety, you are not going to be into doing shows. Straight up. Yeah, shows are a lot of work. Okay, I definitely don't have any other notes there. Shows definitely are a lot of work, regardless of who you are, whether you're selling yarn or yarn bowls or spinning fiber or stationery or whatever the case is. Shows are a lot of work. You know, it's just to kind of recap here in my academic essay. No, just to kind of, but seriously, to recap, it's the research of a show. There's a lot of time putting into researching whether it's going to be the right show for you. There's the upfront costs, which are many and expensive and myriad. And then it's the upfront work of actually making extra stuff to sell at the show. And then it's actually doing the show, which means taking time out of what you would normally hopefully be having a peaceful weekend or a peaceful few days off and spending that to be at a show instead, which is why I said that yarn shows may not be for everybody. But I just kind of wanted to share with you all the kind of stuff that I'm up to now. You might be saying, "Oh, but like woolen's not until June." Well, first of all, most of us start well ahead of time. Otherwise, you'll spend the last few weeks in just a blind panic. But also, I will be gone for 3 weeks. I will be gone for 3 weeks in May. I will be in Italy, dealing with some citizenship stuff to kind of hopefully insulate us a little bit from the complete swirling vortex of uncertainty that is Brexit. Because as you know, Sarah and I are not from the same country, so we've had to deal with a lot of immigration stuff over the years. So I will be gone for a few weeks in Italy, and Sarah will be running the show. She will be doing everything, and she will also be doing the Saturday night live streams. I think I might try to have the pre-recorded podcasts. I might still try to do them. It depends on how good / bad my phone is. I will show you my phone case. This is my phone case, right? That's yellow. It's not green. I don't know why it's showing up as like it's green. It's not. But the point is like it's quite thick. It's really heavy. And I have it like that because I'm clumsy and I tend to drop my phone on hard surfaces. And after smacking the screen once, I decided to put it in this like impenetrable, run it over with a tractor trailer kind of case. But it also means that it's like the microphone can make it hard to hear me. So I might try to do a pre-recorded podcast while I'm away, but I don't know how well that's gonna go. So we'll see. We shall see. Anyway, so that's kind of what's going on. So that means that most of my woolen prep has to get done this month in April, which is why I have an enormous yarn delivery coming any minute now. I'm actually surprised it's not here yet, to be honest. An enormous yarn delivery coming today, and then I've got to basically just start like flinging yarn into pots and editing this pre-recorded podcast for all of you lovely people who will hopefully watch it and not hate it, and you will like and subscribe. I will hope that you will like and subscribe. Like I said, we will be back on Saturday for a live stream. We're there every Saturday at 9 p.m. I don't know what we're playing this week. Sarah said she has some ideas, but she wants to make sure that they're good ideas, that they're a-okay before we announce that we're playing them. And I will of course be back next Tuesday with a pre-recorded podcast about what? I don't know. I feel like my scheduling has gotten completely torpedoed the last week, 10 days, so I don't know what we're doing. With regards to behind the scenes stuff, the Bistitchual pin pre-orders have sold out, but I think there's still some of the other ones, at least at the time that I'm recording this, but there's not many. So if you're hoping to get one of the pre-orders for that, then do head over to the website. I will have some of each of them at Woolen in June, and I will also have them at Perth in September. So definitely head over for that. There are a few OTP yarns yet left. There's not very many. And once we start really digging into the prep for Woolen, those will come down off of the website. So if you were hoping for one of those, then definitely head over and grab it. There's not loads of other behind the scenes stuff this week, just the fact that I'm waiting for yarn so that I can just start flinging it into dye pots and getting stuff ready and preparing for things. We are going to an indie games convention this week / end in London. It's called EGX Resd. So I don't know what day we're going to that, but it's an indie games convention. So we're definitely going to that. And I will maybe I'll just have that be part of the pre-recorded podcast next week. Here's some games. I am a gamer after all. That is the name of my business, Gamer Crafting. As if I had to explain that all to you. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so do join us on Saturday for our live stream. You can watch them on catch up if you are asynchronous in a different time zone. I hope you're all surviving the scourge of daylight savings. I know that people in North America dealt with it a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, but I don't know. I just feel all kinds of off, even though it's only 1 hour. It's silly. Alright everyone, like I said, please like and subscribe, and we will be back on Saturday with a live stream, and I will be back next week with a pre-recorded podcast. I hope you enjoyed this podcast on what goes into some yarn show prep. We will see you at Woolen in June and Perth in September.